Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Thorns and this is my Guild Wars 2 Scourge Elite Specialization Guide for new players. This guide focuses on the Scourge's PvE skills, not their PvP variants. Also, this is not a deep dive into the meta endgame. If you're looking for guidance on builds, there are links below. Instead, this guide is here to save new and returning players hours of research and reading on the wiki. The Scourge Elite Specialization can only be unlocked by players who own the Path of Fire expansion, so no Path of Fire, no Sinister Summoned Shades, no Fiery Torch, no button mashing madness. You will also need to spend 250 hero points to fully unlock the Scourge's skills. Now that sounds like a rather taxing activity, but in actuality it can be done in a matter of hours via hero point map runs. You can hunt for groups in the Looking for Group tab on your interface, and I would keep an eye out on Reddit for runs being announced. Before we dive in, I am putting a safety warning here. This guide will cover all the Scourge's skills and traits, so information overload is unfortunately unavoidable. So it is best to use this guide as reference, and please do take advantage of the timestamps in the pinned comment and in the description. However, if you are an insomniac, sit back, relax, let your worries float away as we journey the Elonian sands to discover the wonders of the necromantic Scourge. Scourges channel their life force into the desert sands to summon biddable shades that damage enemies and create shields for their allies. They use punishment skills to torment their enemies and wield torches to light the path to their destruction. The first Scourge was, of course, Palawa Joko, known as the Scourge of Vabi, so the title has many meanings indeed. Palawa gathered the strongest necromancers to his court and taught them the ways of the Scourge, at least his interpretation of it. Of course, Joko had nefarious plans for his pupils/future minions, and many fled. We learn the profession's dark origins from Akesai Zuni. It is she who reveals the history of this newest profession for the necromancer, and that it evolved from the original teachings of Joko. She was one of the students who fled Joko's treachery. You can hear her tale for yourself in-game at the necropolis outside the Court of the Dead in the domain of Vabi. The primary mechanic for the Scourge is the summoning of shades, so let's delve deeply into that. The shade skill resource is life force, so you spend life force to use the sun shades as skills. Now, many of the Scourge's punishment slot skills and traits also grant life force, so the resource management for this profession is not too taxing. There are 5 shade skills bound to your F1 to F5 function buttons. You will use these frequently as a Scourge, so please make sure you are comfortable with the key bindings. If you want to change your key bindings, just click here, and then select the ones that are more comfortable for you. All sunshade skills except the F1 Manifest Sunshade have a half-second delay before activation. Okay, so let's look at these skills 1 to 5, starting with F1 Manifest Sunshade, which summons a sunshade at a targeted location. This skill has a 900 range, and up to 3 enemies within 130 range of you or your sunshade and your sunshades will suffer 2 seconds of cripple and 2 seconds of torment, as well as flat damage. Summoned sunshades endure for 20 seconds with a 15-second recharge on the skill. F2 is Nefarious Favor, which converts a condition on an ally into a boon. Here is a list of the condition to boon conversions. This skill can affect up to 3 allies, converting 1 skill on each, but allies must be within 180 range of either the necromancer or their shade to gain the benefit of this spell. F3 Sand Cascade creates a shield of sand at your and your sand shade's location. Up to 3 allies in range of this effect can be shielded, which grants barrier barrier temporarily increases your health pool, effectively allowing incoming damage to burn through the barrier's hit point buffer before your actual hit points start taking a beating. F for Garish. Pillar inflicts 1 second of fear on up to 3 enemies in a radius of 180 around you and your sand shades. F5 Desert Shroud shields the Necromancer from damage via barrier, effectively increasing your health pool for 6 seconds as well as pulsing out flat damage to up to 3 enemies in a 180 radius around you and your sand shades. This skill also inflicts 10 seconds of torment, pulses 7 times and endures for 6 seconds. Torment damage is increased if the enemy who is afflicted with it is moving. Onto punishment skills. There are 6 punishment slot skills which are unlocked as a Scourge Necromancer, but only the healing and elite skills can be used in aquatic combat. So let's drill down into each of the Scourge punishment skills, starting with the healing skill. Sand Flare is a self-heal which also grants barrier to you and up to 5 allies in a radius around the Scourge of 240. Like all punishment skills, this heal offers offensive boon corruption, which converts a boon on an enemy into 8 seconds of torment and 2 seconds of cripple. This can affect up to 5 enemies in that same 240 radii. Enemies must have at least 1 boon to trigger this effect. Please note, torment damage increases if the afflicted enemy is moving. Onto the utility punishment slot skills. Trial of Anguish is a stun breaker that also grants 6 seconds of swiftness and 6 seconds of stability for the Necromancer and up to 5 allies. Using this skill leaves a ground effect in the Necromancer's wake. Enemies who pass through this ground effect are gifted 4 seconds of burning. There you go, enjoy that. And of course, boon corruption. Again, 1 boon being converted into 8 seconds of torment and 2 seconds of cripple, assuming they have any boons on them. Torment damage is increased if the enemy is moving whilst affected. Desiccate grants the Necromancer and up to 5 allies 5 stacks of might for 8 seconds as well as 10% life force gain. An additional 2% life force can be leached per hit. Desiccate has a radius of 300. Like the other punishment skills, enemies with boons will also have 1 of those boons converted into 8 seconds of torment and 2 seconds of triple, and torment damage is increased if the afflicted enemy is moving. Sandwell is a ground targeted teleport which creates a usable portal for both the Scourge and their allies that endures for 8 seconds. The first time the teleport is used, it applies barrier, temporarily boosting your and your allies' health pool. Enemies within 180 range of the portal who have boons will have 1 of them converted into 8 seconds of torment and 2 seconds of cripple. Again, torment damage is increased if that enemy who is afflicted is moving. Serpent Siphon is an unblockable 900 range attack which deals flat damage and inflicts 10 seconds of poison on up to 5 enemies, as well as converting a boon on any of them into 8 seconds of torment and 2 seconds of cripple if the enemy has any boons to start with. Again, torment damage is increased if that enemy who is afflicted is moving. As the attack lands at the enemy's location, a small 6-second ground effect is created which allies can use to gain barrier. Punishment Elite slot skill. Ghastly Breach is a combo dark field which drops at the caster's feet. This field has a 300 radius, endures for 5 seconds, and pulses out 2 seconds of burning and slow on enemies caught in it. Ghastly Breach deals flat damage with each of its 5 pulses and grants 3 stacks of might on allies with each pulse too. Like other punishment skills, any enemies with boons or a singular boon will have that debuff converted into 8 seconds of torment and 2 seconds of cripple. Torment's damage is increased if the afflicted enemy is moving. Weapon skills. When you unlock the Scourge Elite Specialization, you also unlock a new weapon for the Necromancer, the Torch. Please note you can only equip your new fiery stick when you have selected the Scourge Elite Specialization in your build. It is hard locked to that specialization. And oddly enough, you can only equip elite specializations on the bottom slot of your build. I have no idea why. So let's look at our shiny new torch skills. Harrowing Wave is a 600 range attack that can affect up to 5 enemies. The attack deals flat damage and inflicts 8 seconds of burning and 2 stacks of torment for 6 seconds, as well as granting the Scourge 3% life force for each target struck. Oppressive Collapse is a single target 900 range attack, which will knock down your enemies for 2 seconds if they remain on the 240 radius ground effect. The skill deals flat damage, inflicts 2 stacks of torment for 9 seconds, and grants the Scourge and their allies 2 stacks of might for each condition on that target. All player builds have 9 fixed traits and 9 optional traits. Traits are split into Adept, Master and Grandmaster, so 1 fixed trait and 1 optional trait for each tier. Elite Specialization trait lines also include a minor proficiency, which allows you to use the unique weapon for the Scourge. That is, of course, the Torch proficiency. Okay, so let's look at the Adept traits, starting with its fixed trait, Mantle of Sand, which allows the use of sand shades and punishment slot skills. Onto the optional traits for the Adept. Abrasive Grit grants 2 stacks of might for 6 seconds to allies and removes a condition when they gain barrier. Fell Beacon reduces the recharge time on torch skills by 20% and grants the Scourge an increase to their expertise equal to 7% of their condition damage. Nourishing Ashes grants the Scourge plus a 5% life force gain when they inflict the condition burning on their enemies, as well as when they remove or corrupt a boon. Master traits. The fixed master trait is Sand Sage, which allows the Scourge to increase by 75 their concentration and expertise for each of their active sand shades. Optional master traits. Desert Empowerment grants barrier to up to 3 allies in 140 radius of the Scourge when Manifest Sand Shade is cast. Herald of Sorrow converts your F5 Desert Shroud into Harbinger Shroud, which grants a potent barrier to allies on activation and when the shade detonates after 3.5 seconds. The attack aspect of this skill can affect up to 3 targets, as it deals flat damage, inflicts 6 stacks of torment for 10 seconds, and converts 2 enemy boons to conditions. Sadistic Searing reduces the recharge rate on your punishment skills by 20% and inflicts 4 seconds of burning on up to 3 enemies when you next cast Manifest Sunshade. Searing lasts for 10 seconds and has a radius of 180. Grandmaster traits. The fixed Grandmaster trait is Blood as Sand, which reduces by 5% incoming damage for each sand shade you have active. Grandmaster optional traits. Sand Savant allows the Scourge to only summon a single but enhanced sand shade. This super sand shade attacks can affect up to 5 targets, increased by 2. Its duration is increased by 33%, and its area of effect is increased by 120. For related traits, your super sand shade is treated as if you had 3 summoned shades active. Demonic Law increases the damage of torment inflicted by the Scourge by 33%, and when you inflict torment on an enemy, that trait adds 3 seconds of burning 2 just to add insult to injury. Finally, we come to Feed from Corruption. When the Scourge removes or corrupts a boon, this trait grants that self-said boon to the Scourge. Further reading. Now, you may be thinking, awesome sauce, now I know all the lovely traits and their effects, but what traits do I use? For World v World, for PvP, if I want to be a support Scourge in a raid, and this is where I direct you to the description below, where I have links to Snowcrows and Meta Battle and Quantify and Gods of PvP and easy builds. There are just too many build variations and possibilities to cover here without making this video exceptionally long. And unless you are wanting to min-max the metas, then the build is really about personal preference. The best advice that I can give you is find a playing style that you enjoy and run with it. But please do try lots of different builds, because you never know what's going to tickle your fancy. Now, if you have specific questions, please do feel free to pop them below, but I would direct you to the Guild Wars 2 Reddit community, which is a vast, wonderful resource, not just a meme factory, I promise. There are numerous build threads on there and links to other creators, and the community is very welcoming and helpful, so do pop in, say hello, show them some love, and if you have a question, don't be afraid to ask. Now, dedicated Scourge Elite Kit. As with all Elite specializations, the Scourge gets 2 unique weapons. The exotic Scourge Torch, which is unlocked via your Scourge Elite specialization hero points, and the Ascended variant, Guide for the Lost, which requires the collection of 14 items linked to the Path of Fire, events and gear. Links below to the achievements. You also have access to the Scourge Tendrils, an exotic shoulder piece, which is gained via again unlocking Scourge Elite specializations with hero points. So if you're a fan of wearing desiccated fingers on your shoulders, rejoice. Anyway, that's my new player guide for the Scourge Elite specialization. If you found it interesting and informative, please like, share, subscribe to my channel, and do please show some love to Ada, Hayne, Molini, Jolly Joe Star, Sir Azu, Carb, Christopher Martin, Dark Griever, and all my wondrous patrons without whom I would be unable to dedicate the time and resources I do to my content creation. I can never thank them enough. Also, if you're feeling inspired and want to try the Scourge or any of the Necromancer's bomb-proof builds, there are referral links below to the free-to-play game, the Heart of Thorns expansion, and the Path of Fire expansion too, thanks to the generosity of Arenanet and their partner program, of whom I am a proud affiliate. Using any of the referral links below directly supports my channel. The next Elite specialization I cover will throw us back to the Heart of Thorns expansion, and I'm sticking with the Necromancer, so the Reaper is up next. If you like scythes and want to channel your inner personal Grim Reaper, do keep an eye out for that. Now, I hope you will join me very soon for more Guild Wars 2 goodness, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.